Hello folks, this is Jeff Phillips with SmokeandMeat.com, and I had a lot of you ask me questions about how do you clean up your smokers and what do you do, especially where it relates to pellet smokers. They end up having a lot of ash down in them, and there's things you need to do to keep them working properly. I just happen to have a Camp Chef pellet smoker here. It's the Wi-Fi version, but it doesn't really matter. This will apply to almost any pellet smoker you have. This one has not been used in probably a month or better, and it's pretty dusty, pretty dirty. It needs some cleaning on the inside. It's probably got a lot of ash in there. I've just uncovered it, taken my cover off, and we're going to get in here and do a little cleaning on it. And I thought I'd let you kind of watch and see how I do it, and you can just kind of go from there. So let's get right into it. Now, I don't use these top grates a whole lot, so they're not filthy. Also, I typically use a pan with a rack, so my grates don't get real dirty, and I tend to dishwash these just as soon as they get done. So you're not going to see a lot of gunk on those. But if you do have a lot of gunk on your racks, you can definitely clean some of that off with I like to use just a piece of foil, wad it up. To me, I do not like to use the bristle brushes. There's always a chance you can leave a bristle, piece of metal bristle on the grate, and if that gets into food, into your meat or whatever you're cooking, that can be real dangerous for someone that gets that in their bite when they're eating. So I just scrunch up a piece of foil and do some cleaning with that, and that'll knock off most of the heavy stuff. And if your grates like this will fit in the dishwasher, that's what you need to do. Put them in the dishwasher. Put it on the heaviest duty cycle it has, and just let it do the heavy work. For now, these don't look too bad, so I'm gonna just lay those on the outside. Once you get down into your pellet smoker, you're gonna see something that looks like this. The one for Camp Chef, this model anyway, has the notches, which allows some of the heat to come up in case you want to do some searing. And a lot of times I will cover this with foil to help contain some of the drips. I don't have any foil on there right now, but before we get done here, we will clean this a little bit and cover that with foil. So now, once you get down into the smoker, normally there's something called a heat deflector. The one on the Camp Chef has a knob over here, if you want to bring the camera around. And I can just move that heat deflector out of the way so we can get to the burn pot. But on some pellet smokers, it's just something you just lift out. So that's just how this one happens to work. Now you can get some close up down in there and show them how much ash I have. There's quite a bit of ash buildup. I've had it a lot worse than this. Sometimes in the wintertime, you can leave some of the ash down in the body of the smoker itself to help insulate. As long as you keep your burn pot cleaned out, that's the main thing. The burn pot here is where all your heat's coming from for your cooking, so that needs to be kept as clean as possible. Fortunately, on the Camp Chef, I just happen to really like this pellet smoker. If you get down here below, it's got a knob you can pull out. Now when I pull that out, look down in here, you'll see it removes the bottom of the burn pot and allows the ash to fall down into a cup. And once the ash falls down, I can push this back into place, and tighten that so it'll stay in place. And there's a cup on the bottom I'll just pull out here, and there's my ash. So keeping the burn pot clean is really easy on the Camp Chef Woodwind, because right before I cook, I do that every time, and I always know my burn pot is ready to cook. I brought a bucket out here that I can put my ash in, and I'll just reinstall that real quick. So now my burn pot is clean and ready to go. But I am going to take the time to vacuum out all of this ash here, As you can see, my drip pan drains into this trough and out to the drip bucket, and I'm gonna clean up some of the gook there, and we'll just make this look real good. I just have a basic shop vac. I believe I got this one at Lowe's. This is just a small one, but all I use this one for is ash, because it is once you start cleaning your smokers with a vacuum cleaner, you're probably not going to want to use it for inside the car or anything like that. Alright, so once I'm ready to go and all plugged in, I'm just going to use my vacuum cleaner, and I'm just going to do a real good job of vacuuming out all this ash. Okay, that's a pretty good job there. You know, you can spend as much time with that as you like. I just try to get out the basic ash that's free and ready to move, and then I've got a putty knife here that I like to use. It works really good. I highly recommend it. Another thing I forgot to mention is I recommend you wear gloves. Kind of get that stuff off your hands. Now down in here in the bottom, you will notice there's always some grease and things that gets down there and mixes with the ash, and I just like to scrape that out. I try not to scrape the metal. I'm just trying to get the main grease out of that. I'll move my bucket a little closer here. Just vacuuming out the ash is something you should probably do about every 10-12 hours of cooking. But something like this, where you actually get down and get the grease out, that's not something you would do every, maybe a couple of times a year. Depends on how, and that just depends also on how often you cook. If you don't cook that often, then it may be something you just do, you know, during your spring cleaning routine. The idea is not to get the underbelly of your smoker clean enough to eat off of. You're just trying to just give it some basic routine maintenance. Keep the grease out of there, keep the ash out of there. You're going to keep down any chance of a grease fire or anything like that. And some of this stuff, once I loosen it, it's actually mixing, the grease is mixing with the ash, and so it's a pretty dry substance, so I can vacuum that out once I loosen it. So that's what I might work on doing, actually, just kind of loosening some of that, and then I'll vacuum it out. Some of this loose stuff, just knock it off a little bit. Let me move this thing there back. I like the fact that I can move this heat deflector out of the way while I'm cooking and let that heat come up through the drip pan on the Camp Chef Woodwind, but it would be nice to sometimes to remove this, and well, I guess technically I've actually never done it that way, but technically you could do something like that on the Woodwind if you have this particular model. You can kind of move it back like that and get it out of the way, but it's still really not out of the way per se. So see if I can knock some of this loose down in here. I know it's probably hard to see what I'm doing up in there. And actually the walls of the smoker here are not too bad, so I'm not going to do too much with that. Sometimes on a smoker, once you've cooked on it, you'll notice some of this black creosote really forming, and a lot of times when you scrape a wall of a smoker like that, you'll see all this black stuff falling down. We got to remember, you don't want that stuff getting onto your food. So you want to get that loose stuff knocked off. I don't really have any problem with that here, but I have in the past. And I try to keep that stuff off of there so it won't get into the food. Now another area we need to look at is this trough here I was talking about earlier. Now all your grease runs down into that trough, and I'm just going to loosen some of that. And you know, there may be a better tool than, I mean, maybe a smaller putty knife would work better for something like that. Let me run the vacuum cleaner again and vacuum some of the stuff out that I've knocked loose. That's actually about the extent of what I typically do as far as getting all the grease out of there, getting the ash out, and just kind of getting the underside of that in good shape. Put my heat deflector back into place. So now we need to look at our heat deflector, or actually our drip pan. Now this thing don't actually look that bad. If I forget to put foil on this thing and I cook something directly on the grates like ribs or something like that where you really need all your space, man, stuff can fall down on this and it'll just be nasty. And you'll have to clean it. And something like this is exactly what you're going to do. So you just kind of, between each one of those, if you have this smoker, you just go in between each of those notches and just kind of knock that stuff loose. And then once you get all the stuff off of it, then you can even put this in the dishwasher if you wanted to. I generally just get this as clean as I can and then wrap it in foil. So I'm going to cover this with foil. I'm just going to pull out how much I think I need. That'll work. Make sure it's even on both sides. And make sure you have enough here to drop down below that part that sits down in the grease pan and the trough. Just fold that under on the ends. You want to make sure there's no foil sticking out on the edges because that's where the heat comes up. You want to make sure that's all free space so the heat can flow up like it's supposed to. Now, flip this around. I'll place this down in here where it goes. Make sure your foil is flat against the... Now what happens, if you happen to cook something in here directly on the grates, the grease will drip down in here. It'll come on down into the trough like it's supposed to. But after a couple of cooks, you can, or after every cook if you want to, you can remove this foil and replace it. And this keeps your smoker clean, but more than anything else, it reduces the chance of having a grease fire. So that's good there. Now if you want to do a little cleaning on your grates, you can do that. I think I mentioned earlier you can put those in the dishwasher if they'll fit. To me, that's the best possible scenario. I just don't like cleaning in general, but I like for things to be clean, so anywhere I can reduce my work in cleaning just helps me. And sometimes I just wipe those off. They just get dusty. And those are good. I'll replace my... That's another thing I really like about this Camp Chef, and this is not a Camp Chef review per se, but it doesn't hurt to point out things that I like in case you're looking for a pellet smoker. These upper racks are really, the way they designed it, the shape and and it just lends itself to cooking a lot of food in a small space. And I'll go ahead and wipe these off a little bit while I'm at it. Anything I can do to knock off some dust while I'm in here is good. And now that smoker is ready to go, ready to cook. Now I just use a basic universal cleaner on the outside of my smokers. Just try to keep the dust off. Try to keep them looking good. It's not something you have to do. Just make sure that any food you cook is going to be clean for your guests. And I've had this thing under cover. Had the cover on it, but it does sit out in the rain with that cover, and it doesn't get water under the cover or anything, but it just still gets kind of dusty looking. Just clean what you can. I guess the other thing we could look at would be the control. You want to be kind of careful with that. You don't want to spray any real heavy duty cleaner on it, but just make sure it's free of dust. And that sight glass is nice to show you how many pellets you have. So I'll just kind of dust that off a little bit. So the only other thing we need to do is fill this thing up with pellets, and we are ready to go. So that is pretty much the basics of how I clean my pellet smokers. I don't go to a whole lot more trouble than that most of the time. We're ready to cook, and you really can't ask for a cleaner smoker than that. So once again, this is Jeff Phillips with SmokingMeat.com. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, be sure and do so, and that just ensures that you will get the notifications whenever I upload a new video. And appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you in the next video.